Welcome back, first of all, Sir Keir. We haven't seen you since June.
No,
that's
you made this big speech about why Boris Johnson and his government should stop avoiding ducking Good Morning Britain, and we didn't see you again for the rest of the year.
Piers, I'm going to have to take issue with you there, because I saw your tweet and I said to the team, that can't be right. Surely that can't be right. And we checked. And
it is with us.
Yeah.
No.
We slipped on with Ben and Charlotte, but not with us.
Look, Piers, we came on, I think, twice in October and various other times. Now, I think that may have been a Thursday and a Friday, because at least one of them was to do with the Equality and Human Rights Commission report, which was published on a Thursday. So I can't dictate which days you're there, and I always come on when you ask.
Well, just an
I did
FYI,
check with the team.
we do Monday to Wednesday together and have done for 6 years. So it's good to see you again. There was a certain irony in the fact we never saw you again after your tub-thumping clarion call to Boris to come back on the show.
It felt like you'd ghosted us. Anyway,
you're here, and we're happy to see you.
Let's kick off with talking about...
I was on your show, but it wasn't Monday to Wednesday.
Let's start off by talking about schools, because you have been in a dilemma, haven't you, as a party, over schools closing. The Prime Minister, having said they were safe on Sunday and instructing parents to send their children to school on the Monday, then tells parents and teachers at the end of the day that schools must close. Do you think you should have taken that position earlier? Because yesterday morning, your education spokesman was saying no, schools should remain open. And you changed your position too.
It's a really tough call. I absolutely accept that. The truth is I wanted schools to stay open. We're obviously talking about primary schools this week. It became clear that, obviously secondary schools weren't going to open this week. A number of schools in different places, London, for example, then weren't going to open. But in principle, I've always been of the view that schools should be the last place to close. And I couldn't see the sense in some areas, retail, for example, still being open and schools being shut. So I wanted them to stay open, because once you've closed schools, as we're now going to see, they're going to be closed for some time. And that has a huge impact, particularly on more vulnerable and disadvantaged children who won't be able to learn at home in the same way, and who are vulnerable sometimes
but the problem we got into yesterday was we had the absolutely insane situation of the British Prime Minister on Sunday 6 times assuring us that schools were safe, Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary, assuring us 2 days before that not only were schools safe and they'd all be going back to school, but there would be no need for a national lockdown. And literally within hours of Boris Johnson saying all this, he does a complete U-turn again, and he closes all the schools, but not before millions of kids have gone back to school. He now calls them the big passers on of the virus. So they had a whole day to go and infect each other. And then he cancels it and they all go home back to their older relatives. I mean, this is, apart from anything else, that is a public health disaster at this stage of the pandemic.
Well, one of the features, I mean, you're absolutely right. And that's why on Sunday I called for a national lockdown and renewed that call yesterday, because I could see it was inevitable. The SAGE minutes, the expert advice, had been given to the government, I think the 22nd of December. That became available to the rest of us in the latter part of last week. Having looked at that, it seemed obvious to me that we were heading for a national lockdown.
Okay, but let me ask you, so let me just jump in there, because if it was that obvious to you, Sir Keir Starmer, then why didn't you go further on Sunday and say, absolutely no way should schools open tomorrow? Well, it's clear they're going to have to shut. And we cannot allow a situation where we let all these kids go back for one day, potentially infecting each other and their teachers, and then going back home and saying that's it. Wouldn't that have been the braver thing to do? One of the criticisms of, you've had lots of praise as leader, one of the criticisms is that you're a bit of a Monday morning quarterback. You wait right till the moment where it looks like Boris Johnson's going to do something, and you pipe up, well, I think he should do something. Well, whereas actually on Sunday and earlier, if we knew by the end of last week how it was looking on numbers, shouldn't you have, and the whole party, have come out and said, we do not think any school should reopen? It's too dangerous.
Let me just pick up that challenge and meet it, because back in the autumn, when we were talking about lockdown, a circuit break then, I made that call very, very clearly And it was a good 2 weeks, I think, of the government saying, what a load of rubbish. Labour Party wants to have a lockdown. We don't need a lockdown. That would be a disaster. And then went and did it. So that wasn't an 11th hour decision by me by any stretch of the imagination. As we were then coming into Christmas, I could see that the 5-day mixing was going to be a disaster as well, and challenged the Prime Minister to change that. Again, he stuck it out for quite a while before then changing his mind. So your portrayal that this has all come at the last minute, I don't think is right.
No, I was talking specifically. I just want to get you on the specifically about school closures, because it seems to me we've had this ridiculous situation yesterday where we've basically sent millions of kids out to infect each other. And it's not about the damage to their health. We know that very few young people get this virus seriously ill, but it's about them then going back into their
vulnerable homes
and their loved ones, and all for one day of education, when it seems blindingly obvious to anyone looking at the numbers, even as Boris Johnson was telling us it was safe, that it wasn't safe.
Well, Piers, that's why I said on Sunday there should be a national lockdown. That's why I said on Sunday that closure of schools was inevitable. But I'm not going to shy away from your challenge. I think closing schools creates all sorts of other problems for children. There's no getting away from that. We saw that in the early part of last year. And I wanted, if possible, for schools to stay open. I said it was inevitable that they would close, and therefore we need a plan for closure. But these are tough choices, and I thought there should be a national lockdown. That's why I called for it on Sunday.
Yeah. So now schools are closed. As you said, I mean, I'm devastated by the fact that schools are closed, because I think it is, really we are damaging a generation of children. I understand why they have to be.
Really tough.
I understand why they have to be. I struggle with home learning, and we have access to resources. How are you going to ensure that the government delivers the laptops and the access to home learning resources that a lot of people don't have? Because this is going to open up a gap in attainment hugely between private and state schools, and within schools themselves, between the haves and the have-nots.
Well, that's exactly the problem. And we will, we're back in Parliament tomorrow, so I'll get my first chance in Parliament to press the government on this. We've been pressing them for months, because you may remember this happened, of course, last year. Gavin Williamson promised millions of devices would be made available. In the end, I think about 40% of what was promised was delivered, and that was the end of that. We can't go there again, because there's a huge mismatch. Children in overcrowded accommodation who haven't got access to devices, or where there's data charges that they can't afford. These are huge and immediate problems for children. You've then got the other problem coming down the track, which is we're not going to have exams in the ordinary way this year. That's not possible. Therefore, there's going to have to be some sort of assessment. That can't be left to the last minute. But of course, assessment's going to be much more difficult this year, because there's less time in school or college to assess people. The government needs to urgently address that.
Yeah, one of the problems is no one's got any confidence in Gavin Williamson. He has been utterly useless. And I'm being polite here. And I thought he reached a nadir last week when he said, I've got absolute confidence that schools will all reopen and there'll be no national lockdown. And here we are 4 days later with both of those things being proven the complete opposite to have happened. Would you employ Gavin Williamson to run your bath?
No, I wouldn't. You've put your finger on one of the major problems here, which is certainly in education, but it's there in other areas. The government promises and doesn't deliver, or it won't see a problem. It pushes away challenge, pretends it's not there, only to have to U-turn again. It's exactly what happened with the Christmas 5-day mixing. The Prime Minister said it's not a problem. He accused me of wanting to cancel Christmas instead of addressing the problem. It's exactly what happened in the autumn.
They would counter and say, well, look, Wales, Labour, did the circuit breaker, didn't work. So what's your response to that? It's a valid point, isn't it?
My response to that was I was calling for a circuit break, national break in the autumn in England. The Prime Minister poo-pooed that. 2 weeks later, he did it. At the end of that break, the R number, the infection rate, had come down below 1, and he claimed that was a success. Now, of course, in Wales, the numbers did come down during the break, but they went back up again as a result of the arrangements in place there. I don't think we need to trade off one place against the other because we need to make this work. But the problem, I mean, with education, we had the complete fiasco of exams. We had the promise of devices that weren't delivered. We had the Education Secretary saying all schools are going to be open in the ordinary way, not even acknowledging that the London schools weren't going to open until the last minute. And that's what destroys confidence. And the thing that's chipping away at the government is this continual over-promise and under-deliver.
Yeah, which I don't understand. I don't understand that because I don't know why Boris Johnson... Well, I do know why. He's a people pleaser. He wants everyone to like him.
The power of positive
And that's
thinking.
one of the weakest things any leader can have, because actually part of the job of leadership is to be unpopular, tell people things they don't want to hear and make them happen. And one of the things he keeps doing, he keeps giving us false hope. He keeps saying this will be over by Easter, over by Christmas. It's going to be over by Easter again. I don't know why he does that, because when he doesn't achieve that, we all think, well, each time he doesn't achieve it, confidence in him just deteriorates even further.
Well, the challenge I put to him just before Christmas was that because he doesn't want to be unpopular, he won't take difficult decisions until they're upon him, and then it becomes much worse because everything has been left to the 11th hour, and we're in that position again. But let me just develop that, if I may, because I think, in a sense, what people this morning waking up want to hear from the leader of the opposition is not, the quarrels with the government, and there are many, and the challenges with the government, and there are many, and me pointing out that I've said this, etc. I think what they want is, look, we are in a really serious situation now. The virus is out of control, and my job, in a sense, is to put aside some of that and say, we've all got to make these restrictions work. We've got a massive job to roll out this vaccination programme in the next 7 weeks to get to 14 million.
I think that's a really good point, because I think that viewers this morning will be thinking, you know what, this isn't a moment for political point scoring.
Exactly. So
this is a point where the opposition needs to rally, because we need to get this over and done with. I don't think we can bear another lockdown after this, and we know that this is going to carry on until mid-February at the very least. So what are you going to be doing to make sure that laptops get out, that resources get to schools, that the exams are replaced by something that works, that people who are currently not supported financially are supported financially, and that the vaccination programme runs smoothly? What can you actually do?
And that cancer patients we're just reading today at King's Hospital in London, they're now having to postpone very important urgent cancer operations. And people who were expecting to have them, it may be too late by the time they get them. I mean, this is a desperate situation going on in the hospitals, never mind everything else around the pandemic.
No, look, I know this, I get this. My wife works in one of the major London hospitals. I feel it very, very closely. But the challenge you put to me is a good one. Firstly, we've got to rally, we've got to support the government. Whatever we think about delay and dithering, we've got to support the government. We've got to make these restrictions work. That means I must openly support the government, and I will, and I've told the Prime Minister that. It means I will support the messaging about stay at home, because it's very important that we say the same thing as the government. It's very important that I say to the government that we will support them on the vaccination programme, which has to be accelerated. There's got to be a new British deal, if you like, which is tough restrictions in return for which the vaccination programme is rolled out. We have to challenge them on the support. You're absolutely right about that. And for heaven's sake, and I'll make this point tomorrow, deal with the 3 million people who've been excluded for 9 months already and now are going to face, I don't know how many more weeks. That'll be the best part of a year that some people have gone through without any meaningful support from the government.
There are many businesses who have managed to limp on through the pandemic, who I think are in a worse place now than they were back in March, who even when they've had help have seen their business, the stop and start nature of these lockdowns is incredibly devastating to people who run gyms or cinemas or restaurants or pubs. And I get them coming to me all the time, and I really feel for these people. They're all viable businesses who've seen their viability disintegrated.
Yeah, it's much tougher now than it was in March of last year because they've already been through the last 9 months. The principle has to be that where there are health restrictions, there are economic support that goes in to match that, and there's now a mismatch. I think there are things that can be done quite quickly. £2 billion has been handed back by businesses of money that they decided they didn't need. That's a good thing. Let's redeploy it to the high streets, to hospitality, which have been hard hit, and, of course, to the 3 million excluded. And I'm sorry I'm going on about that, but I feel strongly now that they were left out at the beginning last
You're right. I think you're
March.
right. But you know where I would like to see the lion's share of cash going right now? I would like to see the government chuck the kitchen sink at the vaccination programme.
24 hours a day,
actually,
7 days a week.
The reality is we are now seeing is that the only way out of this is where we can protect ourselves against this virus. And we've got the vaccines, but the rollout has got to be on a scale that we've never seen. And if it takes 10 billion, 20 billion, 30 billion,
Every
whatever
penny.
it takes,
Yeah.
you know, I just think I would love to see you as the opposition leader getting onto Boris Johnson's back and telling him, chuck the kitchen sink at the vaccination rollout programme. Bring in everyone who could possibly help, ex-GPs, ex-nurses,
Get rid of the red tape.
ex-consultants, get rid of the bureaucracy. You know, somebody made a good point, Sakir, in the Telegraph today, letters page. Somehow on polling day in December, over 30 million people were able to cast a vote. Why are we only looking at 2 million vaccinations a week? If we can get 30 million people into polling booths on one day, we should be able to ramp up vaccinations a lot faster, shouldn't we?
Yeah, this has to be the biggest national effort since the Second World War. It has to be mission critical. We need volunteers. We need to ramp up. At the moment, we've vaccinated about 1 million people, got about 500,000 doses ready to go. But we've got to go way, way beyond that. It needs to be a national effort, and we all need to play our part in that. The first question is, what's the capability of the NHS? And various experts are confident that they can get to 2 million a week pretty quickly. I hope so. I think they're really good. Of course, they'll do as brilliantly as they can. The manufacturers have to come on stream to make sure that the doses are available. But this has to be mission critical. Yeah. We have to make this is the contract with the British public in a way.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're enduring now this lockdown. We all have to deliver on the vaccine, and the government needs to lead.
Can I ask you,
on
just on a personal level, you say your wife works in a big London hospital. What's she telling you about the real conditions? Because you'll be aware, as I am and we all are, social media is full now of conspiracy theory whack jobs leading to demonstrations outside Thomas's hospital where they're chanting COVID's a hoax and so on. It's a really dangerous situation, anti-vaxxers getting platforms and so on. What is the reality inside these hospitals?
Well, we have to deal with the anti-vax campaigns because they will cost lives. And if we need to pass emergency legislation to deal with them, I'd be quite prepared to work with the government on that. We could pass it in a couple of days in Parliament. And the sooner we do that, frankly, the better, because for many NHS staff, it is really distressing. They're under huge pressure. And it's been building over the last few weeks and months. They're all doing their level best. They're all seeing that it's getting very, very difficult. And to come out and to have to confront that or even hear that is against the national interest. And if we need legislation, I'll sit down with Boris Johnson. We can draft it. We can pass it very, very quickly, because that misinformation will cost lives. We need as many people vaccinated as possible. We all need to give people confidence to be vaccinated. And that is pulling together as part of the programme. It is also dealing with this misinformation that is out there, which will cost lives.
And what does your wife say about what's going on inside the hospitals?
She's very worried, and pretty well every night we have a discussion about the levels of concerns in the hospital, and the worry about the number of coronavirus cases, but also, of course, all the other routine stuff that needs to be done that's been parked in many respects or delayed in many respects.